Hi there folks, and welcome back to the channel. Now, some of you that have been following the channel for a while might remember I've done a couple of videos in the past about a particular modding project we've been working on for Project Zomboid, focused on making the game feel and play a bit more like your typical RPG with some MMO elements in there as well. It's been quite some time now since I gave the last update on our progress, so today I wanted to go ahead and show you guys what we've been working on, talk about some of our upcoming aspirations and the challenges that we faced since I last spoke about the project. Now, if you find this video entertaining or like the look of what we're doing, you can drop the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more stuff just like this. But before that, we dive into today's sponsor.
In a world where browsers are hungry for RAM, turning computers into zombie machines, only a plucky duck and Opera GX stand between the hordes and the helpless memory. Will you join them in their fight, or succumb to the RAM-pocalypse? Oh, sorry, that wasn't my line.
With Opera GX's RAM and CPU limiter, you can make sure that your browser doesn't feast on the brains of your computer any longer. Switch on the limiter and never let your browser drag you down again. Even the best of survivors get bitten sometimes, so if you need to leave in search of a cure, how about we leave your PC looking good whilst you're away? Head to the GX store, pick up a mod that suits you, and with one click you'll have wallpapers, color schemes, and even optional background music and sound effects. If you're preparing for the RAM-pocalypse and want to switch to Opera GX, you'll be glad to know that there's a handy import tool that allows you to take your browsing history, bookmarks, and cookies from your previous browser over to Opera GX. So don't become a zombie, use the link in the description to download Opera GX today and join the survivors. So, the first thing that I wanted to get into today for today's video is some of the map design that we've been working on. Now, last time I showed you folks a bit of a teaser for the very first settlement we were building, specifically this image. Well, that was then. This is what the settlement has grown to now. This is Junktown, a metal fortress built around the Valley Station Raceway. The inhabitants are rough and ready, abrasive even to some. Biker gangs, drag racers, or anyone else with a need for speed in the area migrated here after the outbreak. The racetrack has been kept intact, now with some new obstacles and a course that goes beyond the settlement walls, built to appease the residents that like to gamble away their hard-earned cash on the deadly races. Still, as much as they might distrust outsiders, the people of Junktown are survivors and look after their own. Once you've earned their trust, they will be more than happy to barter their goods in trade or hire you for some work. Now, the idea with Junktown was to provide a very Mad Max style look. Almost all of the NPCs here will be distrusting of you to start with, but as your reputation increases with them, they'll warm up to you. We'll touch on that reputation system in a little bit, but for now, we're on to the next settlement we'd like to show off today, which is a complete contrast to the last one you've just seen. This is Oasis. This settlement was given its name by its founders, Bodhi and Harmony, who you'll meet through many quest lines we're currently designing. The settlement is constructed entirely from the wood of trees in Louisville Park, managing to bury themselves deep enough into the woods and maintain a strict enough level of noise reduction that the undead have left them mostly alone. For the spiritually minded, Oasis is the closest thing survivors can get to paradise in Kentucky. Meditation, renewable growing practices, and a welcoming, laid-back attitude towards all can be found here. For some, perhaps a little too laid back. Whilst the settlement might give off an exterior of peace-loving hippies to the uninitiated, all may not be as it seems as you dig deeper into some of the questing associated with this settlement. So that's it for now for the settlements. We have two more that are to the point of completion, but we'd like to keep those under our hats for now and reveal them a little bit later once we've had the chance to test them internally a bit more. Also, it's worth noting that much of this could be subject to change as we continue moving towards the finish line. That isn't everything though with regards to map design. I've got one last thing that I'd like to touch on before I move on. This is what we are calling the lab, one of the 2 areas we're adding to the map to represent underground locations that will be considered difficult group content, dungeons essentially. I've talked a bit about this previously, but this is the first time we've been able to give you guys a bit of a showcase of one of those dungeons themselves. Certain quests will ask you to venture into these dungeons, better loot can be found in these areas, and of course, higher risk will also be present. Even getting into some of these areas will cause difficulty in itself. The lab, for example, is going to be based underneath the secret military complex out in the woods to the west of Rosewood. Now, it might look cool, but how do these dungeons actually work? After all, there's no way of going underground right now in the vanilla game. Now, this part is done with a really clever bit of trickery and map design. The map design itself is built to resemble an underground area using some custom tiles and keeping the area confined. Tight hallways, corridors, sharp corners, that sort of thing. As for where it exists on the map, until we get around to build 42 and the developers add multiple levels, it has to be on the ground level or above. What we've done here in essence is shoved it off into the corner of the map where players will never reach unless they want to trek through miles and miles of deep forest, and that then raises the question, how do players actually enter the area if it's so far away? Well, let's go back to the secret military base for a moment. See this elevator? Currently, it's completely unusable. This provides us with our gateway. Now, Chuck, a PZ modder who we've worked with previously, has rigged up a sort of teleportation script. Simply walk into the elevator and you'll be transported to the lower levels. So, with a little bit of trickery, we've been able to create a quote-unquote underground area. By sectioning off this area in this way, we also hope to be able to achieve a reset function. Now, full disclosure, this part is not something we have been able to achieve just yet, but the intention would be to reset the area every time there are no players present. This would ensure that once a group leaves the area, everything returns to the state it was set up in, with fresh loot, fresh zombie spawns, and the replacement of any quest items present in the area. If a player then enters the dungeon whilst another group is present, they'll be quickly able to identify this by the many zombie corpses and decide if they want to leave and wait for the current group to finish, or go in regardless. Entirely instanced areas would be a bit of a stretch without the developers making this themselves, so we think that this system we're aiming for is the best way to go right now, but as always, I'd welcome your thoughts and feedback in the comments. I'd also like to say a big thank you to Simon MD, a member of our community that has been around for quite some time now and has made all these fantastic settlements and dungeons for our project. He's not only built these for us, but he's actually taught himself how to use map modding tools specifically for our benefit, and for that I'm just incredibly thankful. Okay, so next on the list, and something I'm quite excited to show you folks, is the quest system. This has been an absolutely massive undertaking, frankly, and at times I've definitely felt like I've bitten off more than I can chew with the quest writing, but we are making progress. Now, today I'm going to explain the quest system in a bit more detail and show some of these quests in action directly with some gameplay. So firstly, how does it work? Quite simply, we have pseudo NPCs that are placed in all of the settlements around the map. Some of them are traders, some are quest givers, and some are both. Quest givers are marked with this icon when they have some quests for players. We can right click on them and you'll be able to enter into the dialogue with the character. They'll give you a very basic summary of what the quest is that you need to complete, followed by the rewards you can expect for doing so. Accept the quest and it will be put into your quest log, which can be found in the information panel as a new tab. We click on the quest to expand it in the quest log, providing you with further dialogue from the quest giver and the specifics of your objectives. These will update as you progress, changing to completed status and updating the surface level objective as you go. You can carry multiple quests at one time, and optionally they can be assigned to particular factions and have reputation rewards too. Having a higher reputation will change the way that NPCs within that faction will talk to you, namely that they will be more friendly. We are able to put quests behind certain reputation levels, and we're also able to wire this up to trading as well, so prices might be reduced or certain unique items might become available at higher reputation levels, but we'll have more on that later down the line. So you might be thinking so far that this quest system sounds pretty simple, and that's true. By design, we've tried to keep it as compact as possible and make sure that navigation feels familiar to RPG and Project Zomboid players alike. That said, the inner workings of each quest are quite a different story. We've been able to achieve some fairly complex mechanics that mean you won't just be sent to kill 10 zombies in every quest. Sure, there will be the odd kill quest or collect quest here and there, but as an example of what to expect with some questing, I wanted to show off this quest in particular. Now, each class has its own quest line. This is one of the scavenger class quests in which Amy asks the player to speak to some other members of the settlement to question them about some supplies that have gone missing. The player questions each of the NPCs, then returns to Amy, who explains there is one other person who had access to the supplies, but they are missing after a recent mission. Amy sends you to their last known location of the missing individual, and looking around, the player will find a body with a VHS tape. Now, this body and tape will only spawn under certain conditions, so it won't be here all the time. When the player reaches the area, the quest objectives update. Now, at this point, the server checks if a body and tape are already present from another player's quest. If the answer is yes, it will leave them in place. If the answer is no, it will spawn them fresh. This prevents other players from happening across quest objectives and taking key items that will prevent progression for others. We can play the tape in any TV, which then plays just like the vanilla tapes, capturing the survivor's story before they were swarmed by the undead. Now, I don't want to give too much away from the story here, so jumping forward a little bit, we're now searching for the supplies in a stash location said to be in a tunnel system that was dug underneath the Louisville quarantine zone at the start of the outbreak. Now, this is our second dungeon and a dangerous area to say the least, recommended for groups. The loot and zombie spawns haven't been worked out for this area just yet, but once again, when the player enters the area, a unique item will spawn in the dungeon for players carrying this specific quest. They will retrieve it and then return it to Amy. So that's it for the quest system, but before I wrap this one up, I just wanted to very quickly touch on some of the work we're doing with regards to crafting and gathering skills that we're making, as well as the custom armor sets. Yaki has now begun transforming our existing armor pieces into tiered armor. Tiers is what we're calling them internally, but once it's in the game, they may have a different naming convention. As you can see from these images, the tier 1 armor is pretty sparse, and as we go up through each tier, more pieces are added to make it a more complete set. This will offer more protection as the tiers go up, and our hope is that we can provide some other combat or skill-based bonuses from a random selection, which would become better each tier you advance the armor. But for now, we're focusing on the modeling and implementation of the armor itself before we get onto that. This will go hand in hand with our tiered weapons that we've shown off previously. Chuck is currently working on some extra gathering skills for us, which we aren't ready to show off yet, but this would include skinning, logging, and mining. All players would have access to these skills, but unlike the vanilla actions, they will now drop extra items which will be necessary for various crafting efforts, and scaling drop chances by skill level will be a nice way to balance this. Hopefully that gives you guys a bit of an idea of how this is all shaping up so far. We'll have a lot more to show you guys in the coming weeks and months, but for now, I hope this has sated your interest, at least partially, and once again, all of this is subject to change, but if you have any thoughts or feelings about the project and what you've seen so far, please feel free to share in the comments below. I'd be really interested to hear what you guys think on this. And lastly, if you want to support the project, the absolute best way to do that is via my Patreon. A lot of these funds from my Patreon go directly into commissioning mods like these at the moment, and you get access to our multiplayer server where you can join all my existing patrons in testing these things before they go out to the public and get the very first experiences with them in multiplayer as part of our monthly themed wipes. Special thank you, as always, to all of my existing patrons for their support, and I will see all of you folks in the next one.